Sean Connery was the Scottish superstar, loved by generations of film fans. His career, spanning 6 decades, created a distinguished body of work in over 60 films. He is, of course, best known as the original James Bond, whose performance as the British Secret Service agent defined the very essence of Bond.
None of them anticipated the success it was going to be.
But having landed the coveted part, Connery spent subsequent years trying to distance himself from the role. But despite his versatility, he struggled to shed the image of Bond.
It's like some sort of Frankenstein.
Recounted from a wide variety of interviews, we will learn why Bond became such a burden and how decades-long feuds with the producers affected his career.
The lawsuits that went on over the years became like a ping-pong match.
Using rare archive material, we will also gain an insight into Connery the man, who overcame incredibly humble beginnings to become a film legend.
I feel like I've gone 15 rounds with Mike Tyson, but I won.
And the story will all be told in Connery's own words. On 31st of October 2020, the world mourned the death of a global superstar. It was the end of an extraordinary journey that had begun in a 2-roomed Edinburgh tenement in August 1930.
Fountain Bridge. It evokes so many crazy kind of memories going back. Originally we had gaslight in the stairs. And you know, there were, I think, 6 floors, 7 floors, all the way up with 4, it's only a room and kitchen. Some of them were 9 in a family. I don't know how they all fitted in, but they did. There was, in that whole street, no hot water, to my knowledge, except at the swimming baths.
Connery's father, Joe, was a Catholic lorry driver, and his mother, Euphemia, was a Protestant cleaner.
Well, she came from a very tough background herself. My grandfather was a bit of a tearaway and liked to drink, and she wasn't going to have any nonsense like that in her home. So no matter which way you cut it, or no matter what you wanted to do, she was number one. She called the shots. And even my dad, all the time he worked, he used to only open his envelope to make sure the money was right, you know, in the pay bag. And she used to take the bag and give him his money. But that's how he wanted it, because I think she was much smarter than my dad, too.
Born Thomas Sean Connery, he was the elder of 2 boys and helped the family income by taking a job before school as a milk delivery boy.
I started when I was 9 at Kennedy's Dairy. I don't know if it's still there. And I worked every day until I went there in the morning before we went to school. Even if you got wet, you had to sit with the wet clothes in the school. You didn't tell the teacher. Everybody in the street really came closer together around 1940, 39, 40, when the war started. The schools started to get worried about so many children in one area for bombings, so they were looking for new areas to go, evacuation, whatever else. And then the whole educational system was shattered a bit. We were then, at the end, by 1942 or so, we were in people's houses going to school, so we didn't have to go. Certain houses didn't want kids from where I came from going into their houses, so it was easier not to go. So I think that educationally it suffered enormously, and by 13 I had left school. And all during that period, I had one ambition, which was to go to the war. So at the first opportunity, I had signed for 12 years, 7 and 5, I think it was. 7 in the Navy and 5 in the reserves, which I proceeded to do. And then after a very short period of time, barely 3 years, I was out with ulcers.
How did you react to the discipline of the Navy?
Well, that might have explained itself by getting ulcers. I think it's mainly objective, being asked or ordered to do something by people that you knew were stupider than you were. And it's very difficult. It's necessary, I think, up to a point. But discipline was something I didn't need in my life anyway, because I'd had enough of it.
After leaving the Navy in 1949, Connery took on various jobs, including a coffin polisher and an artist's model for the Edinburgh College of Art. The physique he gained from his hobby of bodybuilding led to an unusual first appearance on stage.
You came south originally, so they tell me, to take part in a Mr. Universe competition.
Oh, yes, I was much prettier then. That's absolutely true, actually. I came for the Mr. Universe contest they used to have at the Scala Theatre, and that's when I heard about these auditions for a show called South Pacific.
Despite a total lack of experience, Connery's remarkable appearance was all it took to impress the producers at his audition, and he was offered a role singing and dancing in the chorus, where he first got his new stage name.
We had to give them a name, and the guy said, Thomas Connery, it's an awfully long name, like it was to go in the program. And he said, haven't you got a shorter name? And I had been called Sean by some friends that we used to play up in the meadows with the crowd, soccer thing. I said, oh, okay, Sean Connery. So I used that at the beginning because when I went into South Pacific, I didn't have any ambitions at all as to being an actor. I adored it going around the country. I had a motorbike. I had everything I owned in a skip, and it used to go in the theatre to each town. And I used to just arrive with a motorbike and then go wherever. I'd find digs from the stage doorman. And it was an adventure in a way, and I was being paid, I think, like £14 a week, which was, God, I think I was only getting £7 at the evening news. So for a couple of hours work at night, it was terrific.
Connery's lifestyle couldn't be further from the Navy career he had envisaged, and although he enjoyed the company of other actors, his humble background made him feel inferior, as this revealing interview shows.
I was always very conscious of the fact that one did not have formal education as such, and was greatly impressed when I was on tour in South Pacific with actors and writers and directors that seemed so brilliant and seemed to know everything, and I thought I was so stupid and just over-impressed by them all. There was no future in it for me, I thought. And then we were in Manchester for over Christmas time. We played a lot of soccer with a soccer team in the show. And they offered me the terms at Manchester United. They gave us all the strips. Matt Busby was terrific to us. And we played all the local police and local teams and everything. And I was only 22 then. And I thought, what a chance. They offered me trials to sign on. And this man in the play was called Robert Henderson, said to me, are you sure that's what you want to do? And I said, God, what do you mean? He said, you wouldn't want to be an actor. I said, but I don't know how to act. You know, he said, you've been in the show nearly a year. You don't know what you're doing. I said, well, I hadn't seriously thought about being an actor. He said, well, you're 22. What happens? You break a leg or you don't make it in football. What do you do then? Well, I said, oh, I hadn't really thought of it.
So, on the advice of his friend, Connery turned his back on his footballing ambitions and was persuaded to make a career out of acting.
I said, well, what would I have to do? He said, well, first of all, you're totally illiterate, so it's necessary that you would have to work on your voice. You'd have to learn to speak, and you would have to give yourself an education, which I'd never had. So he gave me 10 titles, covering from all Shaw, all Shakespeare, An Actor Prepares, Jean Christophe, My Life in Art, Remembrance of Things Past. I read them all. I went to the libraries in every town up and down Britain, and I extended my time on tour to complete it. And at the end of the day, I came back to London with a bicycle and about 90 quid in the bank, no phone at home, no check in the post, and became an actor.
I was taken very much with the theatre, and in fact I was about 5 years, I think, in the theatre before I did anything in films. And I did television, and then I did theatre and television, and then eventually film. The first real break was when I did a thing called Requiem for a Heavyweight, which was a boxing television And it was live then, it was 90 minutes for the BBC, and there were no tape then, it was all straight through. And it had to be refigured because it come from America, and Jack Palance, who'd done it in America, suddenly called off. And I took it at about, I don't know, 10 days notice, or 2 weeks notice or something. And I had fantastic response to it.
His success on television led to his first major film credit in the 1957 British gangster film, No Road Back. Before long, this unlikely movie star's career was launched in earnest when he was personally selected by Lana Turner, 10 years his senior, to play her love interest in Another Time, Another Place. The following year, Connery's qualities as a screen star were further confirmed when Hollywood beckoned for the first time, as Connery was cast in the Disney movie Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
That was my first trip to America. Darby O'Gill, and in fact I flew to go to, I didn't realize that on the plane all the food and drink was free. It took me for ages to order something.
Even from this early stage of his career, Sean exuded star presence, despite his relative inexperience.
I remember that I had so little experience about singing that it was a nightmare to learn it and to go and make the record, but to do it before we started the movie. And Janet and I went down, a guy called Tamaretti or Tamamuri or something was the conductor. And there was this great big orchestra, 50-piece or whatever it was, in the valley. And I was at one pedestal and she was at the other, and and suddenly it was me to sing, and nothing came out. And they all stopped, and so after a few stops and starts, they realized that I had absolutely no experience of it, and therefore they would have to just take a recording, and I would do it against the recording. And then the nightmare came when they said, now we do the other side of the record, which was a song called The Ballymaquilty Band, which I had to learn there and then and sing, so with the help of some vodka, with Janet and I, we did it.
She is my dear, my darling one, her eyes so sparkling full.
Singing dilemmas aside, Connery's magnetism and charm stood out and brought this young lad from Fountain Bridge to the attention of the wider film world.
I love the ground she walks upon, my darling Irish girl.
Little did Connery know that this role had put him on the radar of Bond producer Cubby Broccoli, who was about to change his life forever. Despite incredibly humble beginnings, Connery had defied the odds and made a successful career as an actor. And in 1962 came a role that would change his life forever. This working-class Scot beat hundreds of other hopefuls to be cast as the posh English secret agent James Bond, making his debut in the film adaptation of Ian Fleming's novel Dr. No. In this rare interview, Connery recalls being picked for the part.
When it came to picking an actor to fit into that role, there must have been some pretty careful scrutinizing. How were you picked? Was it a competition, or did a lot of people try out, or what happened?
Well, I know that Fleming had some say in it with Saltzman and Broccoli, and Bud Ornstein then, he was with UA. And they had, they called and they'd seen other actors and talked about other actors, and then they eventually met and talked with myself. In the final days, they said they wanted to do a test, which I refused to do because I had been acting for 8 years up to then, and, you know, was nothing like on the sort of worldwide scale, but most certainly in Britain, as an actor of stature from the theatre and television and films.
Were you surprised when you got the part?
I was, yes. Yeah.
Why is that? You'd done an awful lot of stuff, so why were you surprised?
Because it was going to be the leading role in the movie, and there was obviously going to be a sequence if it was any success.
According to the books, Bond was upper-class background, he was snobbish, and so on and so forth. What did you feel about taking that world on?
Well, I never got introduced to Fleming until I was well into the movie, but I know he was not that happy with me as a choice. He called me, or told somebody, that I was a overdeveloped stuntman. He never said it to me,
I bet it didn't.
But when I did eventually meet him, very interesting, erudite, and a snob, a real snob. But his company was very good for a limited time for me.
I would never have recognized it at the time, and anybody who was really honest, and that's including United Artists, Saltzman, Broccoli, and all the rest of them, none of them anticipated the success it was going to be.
And Fleming didn't want you, did he?
No, of course not. He went to Eton.
That's right. And you're playing Natonian.
So did Bond. And he was
So did Bond. Yeah.
That's right. Well, of course, he wrote it.
James, where on earth have you been?
The Fleming effect clearly rubbed off on Connery as he looked the epitome of suave elegance as he charmed his way through every scene and every woman.
Money penny. What gives?
Now tell me, what did filmmakers do to you and what did you do to yourself to turn you into Bond?
Well, I think that the most important element in the whole Bond series was, apart from Fleming himself, who'd written the original stuff and everything, I think it was Terence Young. I think he was the greatest influence.
The director of this picture?
Yeah, the director. Terence had really identified very much with being the Grand Signor, the elegant backgammon, tumbling asser. I mean, he took me on the trip to get our clothes and everything, and it was an eye-opener. The budget on the clothes was astronomical in relation to the film, but he was right, Terence, because there was a look about it. Terence Young and myself shared a similar sense of humor, and I think that really resolves 80% to 98% of the problems of everything. And between that and his background and what he knew about the guards, officers, and all that kind of thing, it worked out very well.
Bond had struck an immediate chord with audiences all over the world. It was the swinging 60s, and politically the Cold War was at its height, with the Cuban Missile Crisis casting a long shadow over people's lives. The emergence of a cool and sexy spy perfectly captured the public's imagination, and frosty US-Russia relations provided the context for the next Bond film, From Russia with Love.
But I've never even heard of a Tatiana Romanova.
Ridiculous, isn't it?
It's absolutely crazy.
Of course, girls do fall in love with pictures of film stars.
The budget was doubled, and once more Connery owned the screen as he accepted his mission in his trademark sharp suit.
No, it's some sort of trap.
Well, obviously it's a trap. And the bait is a cipher machine, a brand new lector.
A lector, no less. The CIA's been after one of those for years.
Yes, so have we. When she contacted...
Then you got the call from Mr. Hitchcock to make Marnie.
Yeah.
Now, from what I've read, most people accepted Hitchcock roles without having read the script. Is that the case, and how was it different for you?
Well, because I was very curious as to what it was, because at the time of offering to me, Grace Kelly was supposed to be playing the other part. And,
the Tippi Hedren.
Yes, and so I said, well, I would, certainly like to read it. Not unusual, I thought, because I would equally say, I don't think I'm right for it, or this is more American than I could ever be.
Yes.
And, but I liked it, and eventually I had a terrific time with him.
Connery played publisher Mark Rutland and gave his character a nuanced and subtle quality, and a clear departure from the masculine world of Bond.
You didn't make many so-called women's movies about women's psychological characters. Most of your films are about men's worlds.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not quite sure how one would answer that. I'm not, I think, particularly skilled in understanding women. I don't know how many men are, but and I find, and it's more often than not the case that most of the moment the woman is in any way attracted, then it has a sexual connotation, which I suppose. And when you have, I find lots of men attractive. I like them, and my preference is really for the company of men. But I don't have any sexual attractions to them. I don't think.
Connery's performance established him as a leading actor capable of carrying a big-budget studio production outside of the Bond franchise.
How did you get on with Hitch? I mean, did he talk much to actors? Did he explain a lot to you?
No, he never. I think he only gave me two directions all the time we made the film. One time, I have a bad habit of when I'm listening to somebody, with my whole attention, my mouth opens. And I didn't realize I was doing it in a take, and he said that he didn't think anybody in the audience would be interested in my dental work. And then I also have a habit of, when I'm a bit up in a scene, I tend to talk too quickly. And after the take, he said, well, I think we will go one more time, and perhaps we'll inject some dog's feet, which meant pauses.
Following the modest success of Marnie, Connery returned once more to Bond in Goldfinger, which would become the quickest moneymaker in film history and catapulted Connery to the biggest star in the movie business.
This is your third James Bond picture. And I'm sure that as far as picturegoers are concerned, they could see more and more. But how do you feel about this yourself?
Oh, I think it's splendid. I think it's very good entertainment. They obviously like it. And one every year, 14 months, is a sort of good, healthy issue, I think.
Now, James Bond really conjures up a picture of blondes, bullets and booze. Do you find that people expect you to be like this in real life?
I don't meet a great deal of people, really. I've been so busy. I'm on my fourth film in 1 year, so the chances of meeting people are pretty remote. And other than going to the theatre or going out to a restaurant to eat or something, or driving somewhere, I leave the house 7 in the morning and get back at 7 at night. So the chances of boozing with blondes and bullets are pretty remote.
This is gold, Mr. Bond. All my life I've been in love with its color, its brilliance, its divine heaviness. I welcome any enterprise that will increase my stock, which is considerable.
I think you've made your point, Goldfinger. Thank you for the demonstration.
Choose your next witticism carefully, Mr. Bond. It may be your last.
Connery was more enthralling than ever, and on set, sparks flew quite literally as he managed to keep his cool even whilst being tortured.
Good night, Mr. Bond.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
As the success of Bond grew, so did the attention of the press and the public. And by the time of the Goldfinger premieres, Sean Connery had become a global superstar. From the outside, Connery's world seemed perfect. His on-screen alter ego lived a high life, surrounded by beautiful women. Behind the scenes, however, things were very different, as Connery candidly recounted in an interview years later.
The Bond thing was very difficult to handle because at the time it was like there were the Beatles and Bond, and they had kind of 4 of them to share it. You know, how they dealt with the press, and they could clown around and everything. And I never took a press agent, which was, I suppose, not very smart in one way, and yet in another, in retrospect, I think I probably did it the right way for me. Because at least it's a pretty tough university to come through, because you're in a no-win situation. The demand for you and your time is so enormous that it's beyond normal filmmaking times and procedures. I mean, you can't imagine the demand for pictures and interviews.
What had begun as a dream job was now starting to take its toll. Was the very role that had propelled Connery to stardom starting to become a poisoned chalice? With 3 Bond films under his belt, Connery had become a megastar. He should have been overjoyed by the franchise's success, but the role was preventing him from pursuing other acting opportunities.
It became almost, well, it was impossible. What one is frightened of, not so much being identified with it, as being unable to make choices to do other things in your own time. And also the fact that the producers were very greedy. But they were very very difficult times, because if you, I can't remember the fees now, and I'd rather not remember what I was getting in relation to what they were getting.
Filmmaker Sidney Lumet recognised Connery's potential to reach beyond Bond, and he cast him in his military prison drama, The Hill. In this performance, audiences saw Connery as never before, broken, vulnerable, and weeping.
You're breaking every rule in the book, and you live by it, don't you? We're both regulars. We are the army. What the hell else are we supposed to do?
I live by the book. Para this and para under section XYZ that. But Queen Victoria's dead. It's out of date.
The Hill, I know, is something that you're much more interested in terms of the character of the play than anything you've done for some time.
That's it's such a change, you know, after the initial one on the first of the Bond films. It's from then on in, you just got to have the stamina of a rugby player. But the interest of something like The Hill is the actual character.
Much to Connery's delight, his efforts were recognised when he was honoured with an award by the prestigious Variety Club.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Variety Club of Great Britain for giving me this award. I received one in 1963 for the work I had done on the James Bond films. This one has much more significance for me because it was for The Hill too.
Despite the recognition, The Hill didn't come close to matching Bond at the box office, something Connery frequently had to justify.
It's impossible to compare a film like The Hill or like A Fine Madness to one of the Bond films. I mean, I can't think of a film offhand, but what was considered a phenomenal success, like, say, Bridge on the River Kwai, which was in colour with all big names and things. Suddenly, you get a film like Thunderball, and it makes 4 and 5 times the amount of money. Therefore, to try and compare something like The Hill with it, it's just, as I said before, a phenomenon that doesn't, bear comparison.
The reprieve provided by The Hill was short-lived. Connery was under contract with Eon, and in 1965 returned to Bond in Thunderball. By now, Connery's relations with the film producers, along with the unrelenting press attention, meant he was growing increasingly resentful of the part.
The time it got to Thunderball in the Bahamas, I mean, you can't believe where they were coming from. I mean, they would come in junkets, airplanes from Japan, photographers and journalists, just to do interviews, see the set, photograph. And we were doing 15 nights of night shooting, which, and in the Bahamas, you can't sleep during the day. And they would expect you to do layouts and interviews, question and answers during the day. When you got home at 6 in the morning or the sun's come up, you can't shoot anymore. I couldn't sleep beyond 8. So after about 1 week of it, one was pretty neurotic.
The press attention was also affecting his privacy at home, and by now Connery was publicly airing his grievances in interviews.
How has being James Bond affected your life?
Well, this is the sort of outcome of one of the facets, and that's the I live in acting. We have a marvellous house in acting and wonderful situations. Unfortunately, it's too accessible. It means that people can come, right up front gate, get in, and it's the only house in the street. It's a cul-de-sac right by a park, perfect situation, but they just come up and sit on top of the cars or come in the gate, knock at the door. It's too easy, and it's the invasion of one's privacy, and I don't believe any of the rubbish about the price of fame or all that sort of jazz. I don't go for that.
Have they been unpleasant? I mean, are people unpleasant?
As a rule, no, but you get some real head cases that come round and have the most, sort of absurd requests, like, it would be marvellous to come in and have tea, or could we come in and take some photographs, or could I sign on your wall, or, juvenile, insane ideas. And there's only one way to solve it, something practical, and that is not to be there.
The Bond juggernaut continued. And in 1967, Connery returned again in You Only Live Twice, where even the film's poster showed how synonymous Connery was with Bond. Still tied to the terms he signed with Saltzman and Broccoli as a relative unknown, before the film's success, Connery felt unappreciated and his relationship with the producers was at an all-time low.
The problem was that they were too demanding in terms of time, and there was an imbalance in terms of reception by people that saw the movies. They adored the movies, and then so no film you could do, no matter how good it was, could possibly compete with the next James Bond film. And it was very frustrating for different reasons. But on their front, my disagreement with them was in terms of remuneration, which I didn't think was anything close to a ballpark fair figure, nothing at all, and the demand on one's time.
With 5 Bond films under his belt, Connery's fame had skyrocketed, and audiences, who had a hard time accepting him as any other character, loved watching him return in the role he had made his own, complete with Bond's trademark ridiculous gadgets.
One of the things that all of us admire and probably envy a little bit about this role that you've been playing is all the wonderful gadgets that you get. You get a little gyrocopter that can shoot down half of the Air Force that the enemy is putting up. Do you ever wish that you had these gadgets, or do you ever play with them yourself off the set?
No, I have no great fascination for that sort of thing. I liked the gyrocopter. I thought that was rather marvelous, and You Only Live Twice. That's authentic, and but as far as gadgets like cars are concerned, and fantastic volcanoes and these extraordinary things, they've sort of developed, and they've got away from the sort of personal aspect of the films, which I liked.
The films escalated, got longer and longer, became more and more difficult to legislate in time. They got more and more hardware, and the producers were frightfully greedy.
Do you think you can escape this character? You've gotten so far into it, and your face is James Bond to so many people. I'm wondering if you'll be accepted as somebody else.
Well, yes, I have played other parts before I started the Bond films, and I've played many other parts intermittently between them. It's a problem because I don't think any other actors had such a sort of exposure in the world as in this case. I mean, it's like some sort of Frankenstein. But I really think that now is as big as they can go and as grand as they can go, and what is it, $10 million it cost to make. And I think that's as good a time as any to sort of leave the scene, as it were.
You're not going to do any more movies as James Bond?
No, I've stated my terms that I would take £1 million tax-free to do another one.
£1 million tax-free?
Yes.
Is there that much money in the United Kingdom?
Yes, there is.
I take it you put those terms having in mind that nobody was going to come up with it?
Yes, certainly. I don't think anybody would pay that amount.
Thinking he had made his break with Bond, Connery could finally focus on other projects, but Saltzman and Broccoli had other ideas. After 5 films and 6 years as 007, Connery was finally free of the shackles of Bond, and it's no coincidence that one of his first subsequent projects couldn't have been more of a departure. Seemingly in an effort to reaffirm his identity, Connery, a proud Scot, left behind the upper-class world of an English spy and decided to return to his roots in Edinburgh. He wrote, produced, directed and presented a documentary focusing on the labour conditions in a troubled shipyard in Edinburgh, called The Bowler and the Bunnet. As he cycled through a disused shipyard discussing social issues, he couldn't have looked less like his debonair alter ego.
It was a fight to the death. And this is the death. Harland and Wolff, one of the proud names in Clyde shipbuilding, is a graveyard. And there are others. Henderson, Simon Lognitz, Blytheswood, Hamilton, Ingalls, Denny's of Dumbarton. These shipyards have gone under with millions of pounds worth of orders and with some of the best workers in the world. There are some things you can't cure with deflation.
The idea was to break down the barrier between labor and management, and it was way ahead of its time in the toughest place.
And there's one scene, I don't know if you remember, but there's one scene in The Bowler and the Bonnet where you look through a pane of glass and you look out onto an empty factory floor and you can see, you must have done a dissolve through because you can see the ghosts of people playing
soccer.
football. Do you remember that scene?
Yes, I like that. That was my whole childhood, and what I, had aspirations to, such as they were, was the soccer.
Yes.
And we used to play in the meadows here in the summer all day and run home for a piece to have something to eat and then run back and play. I think that's where that crowd of us then had got a certain kind of stamina.
Yes.
Bob! Connery was back in his element once again, and in subsequent films, such as The Molly Maguires, his newfound confidence and enthusiasm was on full display as he chose to involve himself in all aspects of production.
Yeah, it's got to be on. I guess it was behind the rock. Yeah, you're okay there. That's fine. Okay.
Well, I think I have perhaps a different concept from others in terms of what I think a film is about. I don't think that it's competitive in that sense, and I think that the better the contribution of all concerned, then the better the end product.
Connery was offered, but turned down, the next Bond film on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and the role went instead to George Lazenby. However, the public didn't take to him, and the box office takings suffered. Desperate to revive the franchise, Saltzman and Broccoli were forced to offer Connery the £1 million fee he wanted. Connery had been adamant he wouldn't return, but seeing an opportunity to make the film on his own terms, this was an offer he couldn't refuse. The result was Diamonds Are Forever, and he effortlessly slipped back into the role, looking as dapper as ever.
Sean Connery, after an absence of 4 years, what brings you back to James Bond?
Well, I started 3 years ago a trust in Scotland, Scottish International Education Trust. And I had an opportunity in doing this film, Diamonds Are Forever, for an amount of money for the trust, which I can't disclose now on the program, but it was my fee. And we'll have a press conference, I think it's on September 4th or 5th, with the announcement of the actual amount. And with this, I could launch the trust with so much money that there could never be an excuse for it not succeeding. And coming back in to do this one, the wicket was better for me to make the conditions of not being so much a pawn in the circumstances. Also, to be able to get a 2-picture deal as well with United Artists as themselves and myself as partners to produce, direct, act, or whatsoever in these 2 productions, with also development money to prepare them during this period which I'm doing now.
Another of his terms was that he wouldn't have to speak to Saltzman or Broccoli for the duration of filming. And so Sean Connery was once again back as Bond, saving the world from baddies and bombs, all achieved with his trademark one-liners.
Well, he's certainly left with his tail between his legs.
This is your own 6th Bond film. There have, in fact, been 2 without you, if you count Casino Royale.
Yeah.
That leaves, by my reckoning, 5 Ian Fleming novels still unfilmed. Is there any chance that you'll be turning up in those too?
No. I came back for the one. That was the understanding, and I'd do the one, and I've got other things I want to do.
Part of your deal, I think, on Diamonds Forever was also that you could make a film of your own choosing, and you chose a play by John Hopkins.
Yeah.
Why was that? It wasn't to make further commercial gains, necessarily, was it?
It never was going to be a film that was going to be a blockbuster or anything. It was obviously going to be a very serious subject about a policeman who's really can't handle the job anymore because he has no other side to his life. He has no home life, really. He has no relationship with his wife, and so it's just a disintegration of getting into his head.
Please don't be nice to me.
The Offence is one of the finest performances of Connery's career. and is about as far removed from Bond as it is possible to get.
Sweetie, enough's enough. Just go to bed.
Please let me help you.
Help. Endless bloody bleating like a sheep with a 6-inch spike stuck up it. I don't need your help. Your help or anyone's help.
In spite of his magnificent performance, it was a box office flop. But Connery, whose priorities were proving himself as a serious actor, was now beyond caring about this.
I have a certain philosophy about films, and that is that there's the two success factors. There's the A stage and the B stage. The A stage is the film that I read, and I give an instance, say, of something like The Hill or The Offence or something like that. I read it, and I think it's terrific. And then I set out to make the film. I see the film when it's completed, and I think that's the A success. The B stage is when the film is given over to the powers that be of distribution and the public's acknowledgement, acceptance or non-acceptance, then it can be a drastic failure. But it can never undo the fact that it's an A success in my philosophy.
Connery was determined to take charge of his own destiny. In his private life, he divorced his first wife and married Micheline Roquebrune, and professionally his choices were becoming bolder and more extravagant, and none more so than John Boorman's Zardoz, where Connery gives the bizarrest performance of his career as the red mankini-wearing Zed.
I don't have a problem in going into any kind of clothes or no clothes for films. In terms of being concerned about period films or whatever. And I think that if you have that attitude, it's much easier to make the transition, whether it's period or whatever. Some actors, I think, have impose a self-limitation by being uncomfortable in a toga or monk's habit or whatever. And I think that you have to make the leap. You have to make of yourself to do it. And that's the most important stage to learn as an actor.
Is it?
Refraction of light.
Connery's performance was surreal, but even his star power couldn't save this esoteric film. It was yet another non-Bond film to become a box office flop, though it has since become something of a cult movie.
Now I see it. I am ready.
Connery needed to make up for the disaster that was Zardoz and prove he could make non-Bond hits, and he struck gold the following year when the John Huston film The Man Who Would Be King hit the right nerve.
For an actor, and Michael Caine would agree with me that it was, just a dream.
It looks kind of strange that if they get in and then they turn around to shoot, we come in and we leave them, the camera goes with us, and it looks as though we might be shooting them.
When you read the short story, the thing that comes across, it's only 22 pages. What comes across is they've interchanged, lifted, I think 50% of the dialogue is Kipling. Very difficult stuff to learn. Phraseology is quite different from, modern metaphors. And Michael can take, he has parts that, in the short story of the dialogue, that Dravid has in the film. And yet it's still workable.
Have you ever walked into a strange room? And it's like you've been there before?
I know what you mean.
Let me tell you something. This isn't the first time I've wore a crown. There's more to this than meets the eye. It all adds up.
The film is a joyous pairing with him and Michael Caine, Britain's two biggest film stars of the 60s, which radically redefined Connery as a leading man.
As I look for humour in most of the parts that I play, because I always think it's the most revealing factor of any situation or any character, I enjoy actors who are fun to be with. Michael Caine, we have a great laugh and rapport, and we used to be rolling on the floor, literally, in Morocco. And Donald Sutherland. And it's so important, but that seems to go part and parcel with people who can deliver too.
By now, Connery had undoubtedly proven himself as a versatile actor, no longer synonymous with Bond. though the 1978 movie, The First Great Train Robbery, saw Connery revert back to type in his most Bondian performance for many years.
I read in the script it was going to be this thing, you know, on the top of the train going out and back and along. And I thought, well, it's a very, very good trick. And, you know, it's an integral part of the story. And, but I must say, I didn't think that I'd end up doing it all myself. We were told the train could never go above 35 miles an hour. Well, when we came to do it, I knew the train was going faster and faster. So we had a helicopter that followed me all the way out, over, back, all the way along. And when I got off the train at the station, we'd completed the take, and the pilots landed in the field next to us with the cameras. He came up to me and said, "You're bananas. You're doing 55 miles an hour down there." And I said, "No, I can only do 35 miles an hour." He said, "No. So this is a modern, you know, helicopter, you can see." So we walked down, Crichton and I and the pilot, walked down to the Irish train driver. He was standing there, you know, black face. And we said, "What is this 35 miles an hour bit?" I said, 35 miles an hour, that's all the train will do. I said, "Well," and we looked, and there was no speedometer, there was no gauge. I said, "Well, how do you know it can only do 35 miles an hour?" He said, "We count the trees."
Throughout the 70s, Connery had mostly chosen roles far removed from the suave and impeccably groomed secret agent, and was now seemingly much less concerned with his public appearance.
You have the reputation, Sean, of being about the least vain of actors. I mean, for instance, you're not wearing the rug now. Are you planning to extend that into playing without the rug, or is it just rug when you need it, rug when you don't?
Yeah, because, you see, it's like, I was asked a question, I had to think about it the other day. Why do you wear a wig? Why are you not wearing a wig now? Or something. Well, first of all, it's a personal choice. I don't like wearing a hairpiece. I don't like sticking a false beard on. I would rather grow a beard. Unfortunately, I can't grow hair, so I'm stuck with that. But equally so, like The Wind and the Lion, Robin and Marian, I chose not to wear a hairpiece because it seemed to work for the character in the film, and then on other parts, one got a better look for what one was after with a hairpiece.
Well, the same applies with Bond, of course.
Well, exactly, and, you know, we tried the other ways, and it just looked wrong.
Through a wide variety of films and roles, Connery had by now finally and firmly distanced himself from Bond. So, given his complicated history with the secret agent, it was to come as a shock to everyone when he returned to his most famous role yet again. After years of hard work, Connery had finally established himself as a bona fide Hollywood leading man, away from the Bond role that had catapulted him to stardom, and which he was desperate to be disassociated with. It therefore came as a shock when in 1983 he suddenly announced that he would return to the part.
It is written in the press already that it was your wife, Micheline, who invited you, suggested that you return to the role of James Bond. How did she do it? Where were you, and what did she say?
Well, it's a sort of convoluted story, but it goes back a while. When I was doing The Wind and the Lion, Kevin McClory came, and he knew I had no desire to play the part, but wanted me to write the script with Len Dayton. I agreed to do it, and it was going rather well, and I told Micheline, and she said, "Well, if it's going so well, why don't you play the part?" And when I thought about it, well, it seemed quite a good idea. Thought it through, and then decided to go ahead.
The film was Never Say Never Again, and a closer look at the film's credits soon made Connery's motivations clearer. The film was an unofficial Bond film, launched at the same time as the Eon-produced Octopussy, starring Roger Moore. The tabloids touted it as the Battle of the Bonds, and Connery had an opportunity to go head-to-head with Cubby Broccoli, the Bond franchise's producer, and to a large degree, the source of Connery's discontent with the part. So after a gap of 13 years and for the fee of $3 million, Connery's Bond was back, reluctant but still enthralling, with a full head of hair, martini in hand, and once more women were literally falling into his lap.
Oh! How reckless of me. I made you all wet.
Yes, but my martini's still dry. My name's James.
Hello, James.
I came down to the set one day, and I think it would be true to say that Irving Kershner got some assistance from you on the days when you were on the set in terms of direction. You have no qualms about that. You don't bow down to the auteur director.
Well, I think that in the case of the Bond films, I've now done 7, and that was his first. I think that if McClory had asked me to come in and do some writing on the film with Len Dayton, it was primarily because I've had experience in 6 previous ones. And after all, it's 13 years since I had played the Bond part, and in that interim period, I've learned a few wrinkles too.
In spite of off-screen tensions with the film's director, Connery tangoed across the screen looking as smooth as ever, and this really would be his last dance as Bond, once and for all.
In the end, was it an enjoyable experience for you, recreating Bond?
It should have been a great deal more pleasure than it was. What I'm thrilled about is the huge success it's had, where it's opened and is still running, That's very reassuring and rewarding, both in one's own sense of work and financially. But it's unfortunate that yet again one has had to carry some incompetent.
Is there the possibility of another Sean Connery Bond, or is this really never again time?
I don't know. I don't think I'll do another Bond. I mean, I'm really very tired. It's the first time, I think, in I don't know how many years, where I don't have any kind of game plan about a film. They should make a 35-year-old young, find a good actor, different, like this, what's his name, Mel Gibson, that sort of actor who can do that. That's what they want to find, I think.
A new James Bond, a younger James Bond.
Yeah, definitely. And Roger and I'll play M and show him the ropes and all that nonsense.
Connery's participation in the unofficial Bond film reopened old wounds with Bond producer Cubby Broccoli. The tensions that had started during You Only Live Twice came to a head in 1984 when Connery attempted to sue him and United Artists for $225 million.
The lawsuits that went on over the years with Broccoli and Saltzman became like a ping-pong match, back and forth, back and forth. But I hate the injustice of excuse me, their way of dealing. And just because they collect the monies and you are a part of it, then the feeling is, or the deal is, try and get it.
Connery accused Broccoli of fraud, deceit, breach of contract, and inflicting emotional distress. Broccoli claimed to be saddened at what he saw as Connery's unfounded allegations and said, "The only thing that I have done to Mr. Connery was to place him in the role of 007, which became the most successful film series in the world." However, after 6 months, Connery's largest claims were dismissed, and the smaller ones settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. But the defeat didn't stop Connery from suing in the future, and he gained a reputation as being incredibly litigious.
You have a tremendous reputation of being a hard man over a pound note.
Well, you don't have to stretch it to a pound. I mean,
No, I played golf with you. Yeah. It could be 50p, I know that. Yeah.
No, I like fairness, and it's not just the money. There's the principle too. There's the money as well.
Well, yes. Yeah. But you've sued nearly all the major studios.
Yeah, the only one I haven't sued is Paramount.
Having essentially lost the case against Broccoli, Connery became disillusioned with the film world and during the mid-80s disappeared from our screens, instead prioritizing time on his favorite pastime of golf.
I got rather disenchanted at certain periods with, lawsuits and these kind of problems are not very, they're very difficult to carry on, like still working and getting up your enthusiasm again. And then I took time, one time I didn't work for 2 years or more, nearly 3 years. And not because I couldn't get a job, but because I'd lost the sort of appetite.
Great finish for Sean.
Away from his triumphs on the golf course, Connery was fading away from public life. Bond had been a burden, but was not without its perks. Luckily, a career resurgence was just around the corner. Following a fallow period with a lack of direction and a distraction of court cases, Connery finally rekindled his career in the late 80s with the films Highlander and The Name of the Rose, and the comeback was complete in 1987 when he was cast in Brian De Palma's film The Untouchables.
Here we are.
What are we doing here?
Liquor raid.
Here?
Mr. Ness, everybody knows where the booze is. The problem isn't finding it. The problem is who wants to cross the pond. Let's go.
Connery was embracing his age and was now happy to play supporting roles. More often, he was cast as wiser mentor figures, such as his superb portrayal of cop Jim Malone, offering guidance to Kevin Costner's Elliot Ness.
If you walk through this door now, you're walking into a world of trouble. And there's no turning back, you understand?
Yes, I do.
His performance in The Untouchables got the plaudits it deserved, including an Academy Award, and propelled him back to having superstar status. Connery had proven himself beyond Bond and rediscovered his joy of acting.
I adore enthusiasm in everything. Early payments. Joking aside. But it's true. I enjoy people who enjoy work. Well, you know, you work many hours, and there is nothing better than working with people that are professional, responsible, enthusiastic. There's nothing worse than dealing with people who are incompetent, not interested in what they're doing. It's boring, depleting, suicidal for me.
After his Oscar win, the offers came pouring in almost immediately, and Connery entered one of his busiest periods, including starring in Steven Spielberg's blockbuster Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. With a worldwide gross of $474 million, it remains Connery's biggest hit and one of his most enjoyable experiences on set.
The kind of epic proportions of it, the fun of it, it's got a lot of style, I think, and I like the idea of being the older guy, having done a lot of it in the earlier days with the Bond films and that.
Connery plays Indy's father, Professor Henry Jones, which makes perfect sense given that Bond was Spielberg's inspiration for the title character in the first place. Connery's performance injects the film with both warmth and humour, and his chemistry with Ford captivating throughout.
I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne. Let my armies be the rocks and the trees and the birds in the sky.
I must say that Stephen was the only one of all the directors I worked with, and I worked with many, who actually recognized one's busybody input, you know, on a film. The amount of, I sort of put myself about too much, I think, in all the different departments. And, but I always think for a good cause and reason. And he recognized it rather early before we even got to shooting.
You made sure he recognized it.
Yes, that's right. I sort of drew his attention to it. No, but it really was. It was fantastic to work with, and as I say, recognizing, which is, it's not a kind of common habit with directors.
Comrades, this is your captain.
Connery's successful film streak continued when he played the imposing submarine captain Marco Ramius in The Hunt for Red October.
Achievement. And once more, we play our dangerous game. A game of chess against our old adversary, the American Navy.
For 40 years, your father's before you, and your older brothers.
Despite playing a Russian captain, viewers were amused to note once more that Connery's accent remained strictly Scottish at all times.
It reminds me of the heady days of Sputnik and Yuri Gagarin, when the world trembled at the sound of our rockets. Well, they will tremble again at the sound of our silence.
I could never want to lose the sound, the music of what Scottish speaking is.
And you've, of course, what you've never done in movies is change your voice, is it?
That's right.
You've absolutely, in every part you
Because
play.
the emotion should be the same internationally. That's what I believe.
Right.
A Russian is the same as a Scottish, the same as an Irish, or a Pole, even English.
Throughout the 90s, Connery continued to star in movies, including The Rock, which financially was the second biggest hit of his career. Connery graced our screen for the last time in 2003's The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, after which he declared that retirement is just too much fun. Having worked for over 5 decades, he focused on his other passion of golf. Despite moving to the Bahamas in the 1990s, Connery remained fiercely proud of his Scottish heritage throughout his life and spent years campaigning for Scottish independence. He also remained actively involved in his Scottish Education Trust, a charity determined to give others the chance he had missed out on, and in promoting other Scottish charities.
Good afternoon. There's a film called Prince of Thieves. Kevin Costner, who's become a rather good friend of mine, asked me to play a day in his film. I then made a decision that I would do it for, they said $250,000 if I could give it to a charity. And it's equally distributed 4 ways between SIET, Heriot Watt, St Andrews University, and Dundee Cancer.
The success of Connery's later career had confirmed his status as one of the country's finest movie stars, and his impressive body of work was recognised by BAFTA and a special televised tribute show. This was a huge moment for Connery. All his colleagues, friends and family were gathered to celebrate him, and the usually stoic Connery was uncharacteristically and visibly moved as he accepted his award.
BAFTA, thank you very much. There is one lesson in it all that I've had a 30 years filmic odyssey and met some really marvelous people and had a terrific time. I enjoyed the work, but what became apparent watching it this evening was I had not seen them as much as I should have. Maybe because one is too ambitious, too much work and attempting to be successful. But then if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have such an award and such an evening, then I wouldn't know. So it's rather like what life is like. It's a real catch-22. I'm thankful for this more than I can honestly express. Where I hear the whole evening, I couldn't do it justice. Thank you.
The following year, Connery received an accolade of equal significance when he was given the prestigious Freedom of the City of Edinburgh.
I know Fountain Bridge neighbour.
There's only 8,000 here.
I know.
Joining the illustrious company of Charles Dickens and the Queen. After 50 years and more than 50 films, the event was something of a homecoming.
I can tell you how I feel. I feel like I've gone 15 rounds with Mike Tyson, but I won. Edinburgh, I thank you.
I think it's the
the highest, it is the highest honour the city could give, and the honour itself is terrific, and of course it's sad that neither my mother or my father were around.
Connery continued to achieve more accolades, including a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Golden Globes, a Kennedy Center honour, and a knighthood. But despite branching off in new directions right up until the end of his career, his image remained merged with that of 007. And perhaps Connery is right to be frustrated by the world's obsession with this role, because when Bond is put to one side, Sean Connery is one of the finest big-screen legends of the last 60 years, who never stopped entertaining us.